It is Walking in Spirit of Truth. And yes, this is John Craig. I am your host this evening. And I just walked in the door. Assignments came in like crazy and loaded up when I was out of town. And I was like, oh, I got to get back. I got to get back. So I literally walked in the door 5 minutes ago, flipped on all the lights and came online. So it is good to be back with you today. And we're going to continue with our study of Enoch tonight. And I'm probably going to need your help on it. So maybe you guys have already been checking things out and reading into Enoch, and I hope you have. It's very, very interesting. And so we're going to pick up where we left off last week, do a little recap, and we'll go from there. Enoch. Yeah, Enoch. We're going to get there in just a second. I wanted to say, if you've not been joining us on Shabbat here at Life of Worship for our Torah portions at noon Central Time. So basically from 1 to 2, noon until 2, that's about the basic time that we have our Torah portion. You can join us here on the Life of Worship Ministries YouTube channel. Yeah, join us here. And then we have our encounter service at 3 p.m. So we get a little about an hour break. 3 p.m. have a time of praise and worship ministry and a message. And we would love for you to join us here at Life of Worship. And here where we have it on the stage behind me. So, yeah. So that's that part. We want to invite everybody. Also, if you've not had the opportunity to partner with us financially, and I know you guys pray for us. Thank you so much that you partner with us in prayer. And I know if you can't support us financially, your prayers are definitely needed. And so we appreciate that as well. We are in the process of the bills this month, and it's taken us 3 weeks to put together the rent. And so we're like 3 weeks late. And those that have contributed and paid and were able to pay online, I say pay online, give that love gift. Thank you so much. I've just transferred money in, so we'll be able to make that rent payment this week. And then we've got to start picking up on the rest of the utilities. But thank you all for that. In fact, our internet got cut off, made that payment this morning, and now we're able to have internet so we can have the show tonight. So that's good too, right? So I say that saying, the needs of the ministry are there, and you all and your support make it happen. It's because we partner together. So though I might be the face, and Pastor Sandy might be the face of Life of Worship when we all come together, but it is you all are the foundation and the core. And thank you so much, everybody that's been so faithful. So, but if you haven't had that opportunity, you can go over to our Life of Worship website. I'll put it there on the screen, and just go in there. There's a donate button, and that donate button will take you over to a PayPal account, and you can pay online. I say pay online, because it's metaphorically speaking, idiomatically saying, click the button and it's a donate button and you give your love gift. Thank you so much. All right. That's enough for that. Enoch. Oh, right, Linda. We are family, and family supports one another. It's so good. All right. Last week we kind of went through the outline of the books of Enoch, and where it kind of breaks it down into all the different parts. You can go back and listen to last week's Enoch. We don't have it titled yet and separate it out as its own little playlist, but we'll get that done. But you can go back there and check it out. I just think it's really interesting. The Book of the Giants, we did 3 weeks on that, and the Book of Giants is actually part of the Book of Enoch and kind of like a sub book of it. And we learned a little bit about the dreams of the giants, and then they go to Enoch to get an interpretation of it, and he's like, dude, it's not going to work out well for you. You're just too evil in your heart. And so you go back, tell the others, and the flood's going to come. You're going to get wiped out. That's the way it is. I keep thinking about Malway. It was Malway who he's a giant and he flew, but he doesn't have wings because he's using his hands. And I keep thinking about this thing about Enoch saying, don't fly too close to the sun. Thinking about that Greek mythology of that one Greek semigod or god or whatever, and that he flew too close to the sun and his wings started to melt or something like that. I was thinking about this. I don't think that's what Enoch was telling that giant about. I think he's saying, look, dude, you're a giant and you really aren't supposed to be flying. And I know it could be just metaphorically speaking, but don't fly too high. Like, don't get too close to the sun. Don't fly too high because the air is really thin up there and you're a big guy and you need all the oxygen you can get. And then if you stop breathing, you'll black out and you're dead. All right. Before the judgment. I don't know. It's just a thought. It was just one of those wacky thoughts that I have. Okay. Don't fly too high to the sun because altitude without oxygen equals tragedy. I think Enoch was a pretty cool guy. Even telling a giant with an evil heart, saying, don't do that. Don't go high. It's pretty, all right. Just me. Last week, we went through chapters 1, 2, and 3 of Enoch. And so we're going to pick up in chapter 4 and go from this. So Luann asks, is it the book of Enoch and the giants or Enoch book 2 or 3? Well, the first part of Enoch is Enoch 1. So this is going to take us through it's going to take us through like the book of the Watchers, the parables, the book of the heavenly luminaries, the book of dreams, the epistle of Enoch, and the Enoch's vision. So it's going to take us through a big part of that. Right now, as we go through it, we'll be able to decipher exactly where those cuts are. This is, Enoch, Jasher, and Jubilees. These are books that are very highly revered by biblical scholars, for one, but also in the Qumran community, and because what they found in the library and the number of copies that they found in the Qumran caves. So I think that's one of the things we also have to consider is it was could it have been canon? And for some reason, it was left out. It was originally, like in the King James Apocrypha, it was originally in that version, but then later on they took it out. But if you look at it that way, they really did consider this as scripture. And so the book of Enoch. So if you've got the King James version of the Apocrypha and you see all those chapters in there, then you can pretty much say, you know what, this is it is literature that is very highly valued, even to the point of considering it to be inspired scripture. So I think we can learn a lot from it. We can glean from it. If you like go through stuff and say, that's really far-fetched, I don't know about that, then put it on the shelf. That's all I can say. There's so many different things that we can look at. I mean, there's some really crazy things when we look in Yashar. There's like, when you read, it's like, wait a minute, that's really outside of the regular context of the Torah. So those guys had really supernatural abilities, and it doesn't make a lot of sense because you know why? It's because we don't have a grid for things outside of what we're usually reading. So I always like, that's very interesting. Put it on the shelf, but it gives us perspective and it gives us dimension. All right. And that's what I like about considering this. And remember this about Enoch. And I think I said this last week when we were reading in chapter 1 of Enoch, that this book was written for those who would live in the end times. And I believe we're living in the end times. So, and if we go back and look at that, the word of the blessing, this is verse 1 of chapter 1, the word of the blessing of Enoch, that's Enoch, how he blessed the elect and the righteous who were to exist in the time of trouble, rejecting all the unrighteous and wicked. Enoch, a righteous man, who with Elohim answered and spoke while his eyes were open, and he saw a holy vision of the heavens. This the angel showed me. So this book, it's like the book of Revelation. That's where we talked about last time, is that blessed are those who read this. And So I think that's why we read it, and there's so much to take to heart. And that is very interesting. It says, I have 3 different Enoch chapters. So maybe you can explain. Is that like your 3 chapters were different than the readings of my 3 chapters? Is that what you're saying, Luann? I don't know. I'm reading from the Sefer version. So, but if they're different, that's okay. Maybe they put the chapter and the verses in a little bit different place setting, but that's okay. They may vary. It's just like in the Jewish version of the Torah, that we find the verse placement in some of the chapters a little bit different than what we have in our English versions, but that's okay, because that's just simply to help us kind of find things. All right, so we're going to pick up from chapter 4. We're just reading it through. We're going to read through the. Okay, so here's some things. We're going to start in chapter 4. It's very short. It's verse 1, chapter 4. They consider and behold every tree, how it appears to wither, and every leaf to fall off, except of 14 trees, which are not deciduous, which wait from the old, the appearance of the new, for 2 or 3 winters. All right, so this is picking up from last time, talking about the heavenly luminaries that change not their paths, that each rise and sets regularly. So it's actually talking about proper order, and this is part of the observances of how all creation follows Torah. So keep that in mind. We talked about that last time. Different things in nature always follow Torah, because if they didn't follow Torah, in other words, the instructions of God, then there would be chaos. And all creation are waiting for the sons of men to be revealed. So this is, I think, so important that we recognize that it is out of all of creation that chooses not to follow the instructions of Yah, it's mankind. And so why do we think that there's such a battle of mankind battling against that which is natural? I mean, when we think about natural laws, isn't it over in Romans chapter 1? We're going to look at that. Let's look at that real quick. Romans chapter 1, when we see Paul talking about the natural order of things, and verse 17, verse 6, I like verse 16. For I am not ashamed of the gospel, the Besorah, for it is the power of Yah for salvation to everyone who believes, to the Jew, the Yahudim first, and also to the Greek, to the Goyim. For in it the righteousness of Yah is revealed from faith to faith. It is written, but the righteous man shall live by faith. For the wrath of Yah is revealed from heaven against the ungodliness, for all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. So think about this. Creation follows Torah. Well, what do you mean? I mean, do they eat kosher? Does creation does what it's instructed to do. So if it fails to do what it's instructed to do, then it will die. So here, the wrath of Yah is revealed from heaven against the ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, because it's directed to men, understanding that men have the choice to follow Torah or not. And just because a sheet of animals came down out of heaven and Peter's told to kill and eat doesn't mean that those animals that the law changed. The law didn't change. It never changed, because Yah never changed. If he changed, there would be chaos. It means that Yah would lie, and there would be chaos, and there would be confusion, and the whole universe would then begin to disintegrate and begin to literally dissolve and explode. It would explode and implode at the same time. I mean, think about if the natural laws were not followed by nature. So in other words, if they broke Torah, then we're done. So, do we ever really think, I mean, praise Yah, that his creation holds to its original design? except the fact that mankind keeps trying to change the original design. All right, let's go on. Verse 19, Romans chapter 1. Because that which is known about Yah is evident within them, for Yah made it evident to them. It's like, this is so philosophical. But no, it's not philosophical. It's like, it's pointing out verse 20, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, being understood through what has been made, so that they are without excuse. So now what it's saying, man, look at nature. It follows the natural laws. It follows the natural orders. And therefore, you are designed to follow not only the natural laws, and nature's laws, but that he's given you specifically as mankind particular instructions, and it's seen as nature follows their specific instructions. So mankind should also follow those specific instructions, because in it is life, and because of that design, it shows us that we are without excuse if we choose not to follow. So, okay, but I narrow it down to love man and love Yah. Okay, that's good, but you're not digging. You're not digging deeper, because now you're still going to come up with your excuses of why you want to eat pig, and keep your own holidays and the non-biblical holidays, and not keep the biblical holidays and all that sort of stuff, right? Verse 21, for even though they knew Yah, they did not honor him as Yah or give thanks, but they became futile in their speculations, and their foolish heart was darkened. There you go. That's what happens. Our hearts get dark, and the darker they get, the less light that's in it, and light only comes from Yeshua, who is the living Torah. And he is both the Logos and the Rhema. If you want to look at a New Testament version, Logos, the written word, he is the written word, and he is the Rhema word. He is the Halakha and the Agadah. He is the Halakha and the Agadah. He is the written instructions, and he's the white fire, the Rhema, the inspiration that comes from the reading of the word, and how it becomes life, and we begin to see it. So he is both. Verse 22, Romans chapter 1, professing to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the incorruptible Yah for an image in the form of corruptible man and of birds and four-footed animals and crawling creatures. I guess that's why they would go ahead and eat anything that's crawling and eat, any form of an animal. Not all animals are food. Therefore, Yah gave them over in the lust of their hearts to impurity, and their bodies might be dishonored among them, for they exchanged the truth of Yah for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, Yah gave them over to degrading passions, for women exchanged the natural function for that which is unnatural, and in the same way also that men abandoned the natural function of the woman and burned in their desire toward one another, men with men committing indecent acts and receiving in their own persons the due penalty of their error. And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge Yah any longer, Yah gave them over to a depraved mind, and to do these things which are not proper. And being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice, they are gossips, slanderers, haters of Yah, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedience to. And it goes on from there through the end of the chapter. Here's the point. If we fail to see, like we're reading over at Enoch, how even the trees, there's particular trees, know when their leaves are to fall off, and in the springtime when their leaves are to regrow. And other trees, those that never shed their leaves, like the evergreen trees, and some other types of trees, which I not think of it right now, but think about how that happens. And it says, chapter 5, and it's because they keep order. And we just read what happens when we don't keep order. So it goes down a slippery slope. I remember back in the 80s. Anyway, he was on Christian radio, and Marlon Maddox. Remember Marlon Maddox? Do you remember that? And and then, yeah, Joe, man has become like the beast of the field because we lose our station when we don't follow Torah. In other words, the Torah is the royal law that James talks about. And therefore, we lose our royalty, but we become like beasts, just like Nebuchadnezzar, going out in the fields, eating the grass. So Marlon Maddox, back in the 80s, and he would hit all of these different things. I'm like, man, that guy was way ahead of his time. He was like many of the talk show hosts of today, that was, kind of followed in the footsteps of Alex Jones and people like that, were just like cutting edge news. Marlon Maddox was like the grandfather of every one of these talk show hosts of today that are really hitting the truth hard. And he was saying, this is happening. And I remember he had one lady on that was talking about the dangers of the hidden dangers of the rainbow, going all the way back in the 80s, talking about the new age and the coming of the rainbow and the 6-colored rainbow and all of that. And he said, these are the steps of the slippery slope. And it's just downhill from here unless America repents. So, because they forsake Torah. And even back in the 80s, I mean, we just knew that there was things that you did according to Scripture that demonstrated a character of holiness. And that's what following Torah is. In fact, if you're going to be with us this week at Life of Worship, we're going to go into Kedoshim, holiness, the holies. What does it mean? And what is this walk? Living it out. We're going to go into that. So let's go on to chapter 5 of Enoch. Again, so if you're just starting with us, chapter 5 is like barely, in my Bible, it's not even a column and a half yet in here on the first page in the Sefer. So you're starting, go back last week, you'll pick up on where we left it off. So again, chapter 5, again, verse 1. They consider the days of summer, that the sun upon it at its very beginning, while you seek for a covered and shady spot on account of the burning sun, while the earth is scorched up with fervent heat, and you become incapable of walking either upon the ground or upon the rocks in consequence of that heat. Okay, again, creation working itself out. And all I can think about is what these stories of, like in Iraq, when the troops were in Iraq and they're saying, 120, 130 degree in the daytime out there in the desert. And I mean, that's such extreme heat. Praise Yah. Living in North America, where I live in Texas, I mean, we might get 110, 112 degrees, but 90s, hundreds. I mean, that's nothing compared to what they experience in some of those desert areas. Death Valley hitting between 130, 140 degrees. I mean, that's normal for them in the summertime. So that's burning sun, the earth is scorched up, fervent heat, that type of thing. Incapable of walking either upon the ground or upon the rocks in consequence of that heat. I mean, fry an egg type of heat. So going on, chapter 6. They consider how the trees, when they put forth their green leaves, become covered and produce fruit, understanding everything and knowing that he who lives forever does all these things for you. Just think about that. In spite of what happened with Adam and Mrs. Adam in the garden, in spite of that, Yah still gave us fruit-bearing trees and plants and vegetables and still the ability to produce food from the ground. And the other thing is, if you going back, the heavenly luminaries, there's an illusion of the heavenly luminaries, not only in terms of thinking about the sun, the moon, and the stars, and we think about these celestial bodies that are out there. And there is also a kind of a thematic understanding that the heavenly luminaries can be and I am very cautious to say definitely are. I'm very cautious saying that, but can be angelic um, angels. I mean, it's angelic angel, but angels. Uh, so that when so there's a thought that those are actually angelic beings holding particular stations by which we can read and understand the story of the heavens, the story of the Besserah that the heavens are proclaiming. It's just a thought that they might not just be gaseous balls. So put that on the shelf. It's just one way. I'm not saying that's what I believe. I'm just saying that is one thought that's out there. But whatever these luminaries are, they have a role. They tell us when the seasons are. We know that right now we're in the constellation where the man with the barley is passing through, and we're seeing these connections because these are the constellations of the springtime, and those others that are up there as we get ready to go on into the next month. So it's just important for us to look at that because it's telling us something about the seasons, and the luminaries do tell us when the next season is and the next season changes. And that's really where we need to be looking, as opposed to saying, well, it's a full moon and this is a dark moon or whatever like that, because that's what the pagans do. We don't want to follow the ways of the pagans. We want to follow the ways of the priestly calendar. So moving on, and that's one of the things that Enoch tells us about. It puts things in proper order. So the moon actually tells us some other things, but it is not how we judge times and seasons or the months. It is simply that is the place and the phase of the moon. It helps with the planting. If we're going to do vegetables that bear fruit above ground, or root type of plants that bear the fruit under the surface of the soil. That is what the moon tells us to do. Okay. Everything else tells us about the seasons. So just keep in mind how y'all gave us these things in order for us to be most productive. Kind of like I've got the copper wire in. I'm going to be putting in copper wire this week into our garden. I want to energize our garden. All right. That's a side thought. So for good production, God's good. He gives us these elements that help us in spite of what happened with Adam. All right, moving right on. Verse 2, that the works at the beginning of every existing year, that all his works are subservient to him and invariable, yet as Elohim has appointed, so are all things brought to pass. Torah, right? They're following, subservient to him. That is even in the order of the planting season and the harvest season. And many of us here in North America right now, what are we doing? We are planting. It's time to put our seed in the ground. Well, actually, we put seed in soil and started growing it inside. Like in January. We should have been doing it in December. This year we realized, we should have been putting these things in December and start growing our seed in December. But our plants are looking good from the seedlings, not yet ready. I think Sandy's already planted some in the garden that she's grown from seedlings, and yet others we're still waiting because they're not strong enough to bear, some of our nights that are still getting down in the 40s. But soon, very soon, they'll all go into the ground. Going on. Verse 3, chapter 6, verse 3. They see too how the seas and the rivers together complete their respective operations. You endure not patiently, nor fulfilling the commandments of Yahweh, but you transgress and calumniate the greatness, and malignant are the words in your polluted mouths against the majesty. So, here's this warning given to man. It's interesting that because it really gives us a connection. Remember back in Enoch talking about the rivers, the very fact that a drop of water And that which would come from a spring, it's just a slight little trickle at the top of the mountain, becomes a mighty river. And that during the springtime, these rivers are go into flood stage, whereas later on in the late summer, they narrow down and they don't have quite the strength and the force that they used to have. Knowing that that water flow goes into the ocean, and that process of evaporation brings forth the rain, the seasonal rains, and the cloud functions, and the snow, and the snow melts, and then again, once again, the restoration of the trickle of the stream of water in as the winter snows melt, and that become the mighty floods in the spring. And what a circle it is. Okay, going on, just thinking about some of these things. But you transgressed the calumny at greatness, and malignant are the words in your polluted mouths against his majesty. You withered in heart, no peace shall be to you. Therefore your days shall you curse, and the years of your lives shall perish. Perpetual execration shall be multiplied, and you shall not obtain mercy. In those days shall you resign your peace with the eternal maledictions of all the righteous, and sinners shall perpetually execrate you. You with the wicked, the elect shall possess light, joy, and peace, and they shall inherit the earth. But you unholy, shall be accursed. Then shall wisdom be given to the elect, all of whom shall live, and not again transgress by impiety or pride, but shall humble themselves, possessing prudence, and shall not repeat transgression. They shall not be condemned for the whole period of their lives, not die in torment and indignation, but the sum of their days shall be completed, and they shall grow old in peace, while the years of their happiness shall be multiplied with joy and with peace forever, the whole duration of their existence. Isn't it interesting? I'm just going, that really kind of takes us back to chapter 2, where it says, behold, he comes with 10,000s of the Kedoshim, with the 10,000 of the holy ones, to execute judgment upon them, and to destroy the wicked, and reprove all the carnal for everything which the sinful and wicked have done and committed against him. And I really think that's the connection with chapter 6 here. I'm thinking about in the time of Enoch, where we have all of humanity and the modified humanity, the giants, the mixtures, and all of that was that's being addressed here in Enoch. Says, look, okay, let's say it's boiled down to 8 people in a boat, and yet they will live their lives in happiness. It'll be multiplied in joy and peace forever, in the whole duration of their existence. And I think about Noah's descendants with Shem, and then going down into down into Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, and all of the challenges that they faced, and yet it's when those who follow Torah are the ones that we see that really follow into having the most joy in life. And so that's really important. Yeah. Eddie and Tammy, you said that the moon determines, let's see. Yeah. Moon, Joe, you said moon is also good for fishing, determines the tide. Eddie and Tammy said determines the tides. So if you're fishing on the coast, you need to be mindful of the moon and the tides. We need that. That's why we watch the moon, and because it affects the tides. See, that's where we're watching the moon for. That's why we're cognizant of even the phases of the moon. If it's going to be what phase of the tide it is, it could be even a super tide. And I think about when we have the super moons, like when the moon is full and it's in the closest position to the earth. Yeah, that's when you really got to watch things. It's so much that celestial body does to affect things on earth, but we don't use it to judge time. It's to help us judge the other elements within creation. But going back here to chapter 6, it's really sobering, isn't it? How we judge the sum of our days. Where does it come from in our culture where we beat ourselves up so much when we feel like, well, we failed. We didn't follow Torah just perfectly today. Oh, we missed that time with Yahweh. Or we, where we wanted to spend the time in the cool of the day with him. And then we got up and we found that there's a leak in our roof. And the next thing you know, you're falling through the ceiling trying to deal with that leak. And now you got a bigger problem. And the whole day is shot. And that time with Yah didn't happen. Days like that happen. Do we beat ourselves up for it? We do. We're pretty hard on ourselves, aren't we? But we shouldn't, because in the entirety of our lives, in the totality of our lives, what are we walking out? Because when we're walking out Torah, we're walking with Yeshua. Think about that. When we're walking out Torah, Yeshua is the living Torah, then we're walking with Yeshua. And so when we stumble on a little thing within the Torah, and what's he do? He doesn't just shove us to the ground or kick us while we're down. He picks us up. He brushes us off. And he kisses our boo-boo. No, I'm just kidding. But think about, what does a parent do? Oh, kid, you tripped on the crack again, and now you scuffed your knee. No, we don't yell at our child for that. We pick them up and we comfort them. We clean them up, and what does our kid do? They hold our hand a little bit tighter, because when they start to go down, what does a parent do? We grab them before they fall all the way. So, so therefore, it's in the duration of our existence that in time we recognize the shalom that we've had, where there was nothing missing, nothing broken, fullness, wholeness, and completeness. I think we should always pause and really think about that. Let's go into chapter 7. It happened after the sons of men had multiplied in those days that daughters were born to them, elegant and beautiful. And when the watchers, the sons of heaven, beheld them, they became enamored of them, saying of each other, come, let us select for ourselves women from the progeny of men, and let us beget children. Then their leader, Samyaza, their leader, said to them, I fear that you may perhaps be indisposed to the performance of this enterprise. Such elegant Shakespearean language, Mr. Samyaza. Okay, perhaps you may be indisposed of the performance of this enterprise, and that I alone shall suffer for so grievous of a crime. But they answered him and said, well, we all swear and bind ourselves by mutual execrations that we will not change our intention, but execute our projected undertaking. All right. In other words, all right, since you did it, we do it. All right. And we bind ourselves as an oath together that if we will all, we're just all going to do the deed together as one. So if one does it, then we all come under the same judgment for it. That's basically what they said. This undertaking, we're all going to do it. You did it, we do it, we're all one. And then they swore all together and all bound themselves by mutual execrations. Their whole number was 200. Remember, we talked about in the book of Giants. Their whole number was 200, was descended upon Ardis, which is the top of Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon. So they came down to Mount Hermon, descended upon Ardis. I guess that's the tippy top. You remember that phrase? The tippy top. The top of Mount Hermon, Ardis, which is the top of Mount Hermon. That mountain, therefore, was called Hermon, because they had sworn upon it and bound themselves by mutual execrations. In other words, they bound themselves with an oath. And these are the names of the chiefs. Samyaza, who was their leader. Oh man, you want me to say these names? Ugh. I feel like Amarillo, she's reading, and she does pretty good. And, being a kindergartner, and she's reading pretty good. I feel like that. I'm like sounding out these names phonetically. Ura, Kabar, Ramael. Okay, I'm not going to say it again. How about Aki Be'el, Tamiel, Ramuel, Danel, Azkael, Sarakaniel, Asael, Armers, Batrael, Anane, Zavabe, yeah. Samsavael, Ertael, Turael, Yamayael, Araziel. These, oh my goodness. Ugh. These were the prefects of the 200 angels, and the remainder were all with them. Then they took women, each choosing for himself, whom they began to approach, and with whom they cohabited, teaching them sorcery, incantations, and dividing of roots and trees. And the women, conceiving, brought forth giants, and they bore to them 3 races. First, the great giants. The giants brought forth the Nephilim, and the Nephilim brought forth the Eliud. And they existed in increasing in power according to their greatness, whose stature was each 300 cubits. Yeah, that's big. Yeah, 300 cubits. 300 of these. 300. 300. And that's like 450 feet. That's pretty big. These devoured all the labor of men. How would you like to plant enough for a year for you to eat, and then a giant come along and just eat it all up? They devoured all the labor of men until it became impossible to feed them. And when they turned against themselves against men in order to devour them, and began to injure birds, beasts, reptiles, and fishes, to eat one another's flesh, and to drink their blood, then the earth reproved the unrighteous. Wow, what a vicious cycle that was. You think about cannibalism. Where did cannibalism come from, and why? Why is it cannibalism? Did they learn it from these fallen ones? And because because it wasn't part of the blood rituals, probably, and to think that they would just munch on them. Okay, think about, all right, movies and stuff, and I'm thinking about The Hobbit and the trolls, and how they wanted to eat the little guys. And I'm trying to think what the names of the different types. Anyway, yeah, they wanted to eat. Nasty, just nasty trolls. Think about those trolls that J.R.R. Tolkien was writing about. Those are, we think about them as mythological creatures. But why is there legend about that? Where do those legends come from? These trolls that were giants, not very smart, but they, food was scarce, so they would eat. And in Norway, where I spent 8.5 years growing up, the trolls was a big part of the legends. And they would say that, these mountains were trolls that came out in daylight and they turned to rock. Like in The Hobbit, the sun came up, they saw the sun, and they turned into rocks. Well, the mountains, they say, were trolls. Well, they were huge. But in those legends are, you can boil them down into certain truths that tell us about the things that Enoch is telling us about here. So, all right, there you go. We talked about that in the Book of Giants. Yeah, it is. Maybe even ate their children. They could be. It's really unimaginable. Let's go to, oh my goodness. Can you believe we're almost out of time? It's 8:53. Okay, chapter 8 is very short, so we'll go there. Moreover, Azazel taught men to make swords, knives, shields, breastplates, the fabrication of mirrors, and the workmanship of bracelets and ornaments, the use of paint and beautifying of the eyebrows, the stones of every valuable and select kind, and all sorts of dyes, so that the world became altered. The world became altered. Impiety increased, fornication multiplied, and they transgressed and corrupted all their ways. Amazarach taught all the sorcerers and the dividers of roots, armors, the solution of sorcery, like the pot and the stuff. And Barkayal, the observers of the stars, Akiba El, signs, Tamiel taught astronomy, and Asaradel taught the motions of the moon, and men being destroyed cried out, and their voice reached to heaven. So there you go. Very, very interesting. Let's remember this. For the watchers, not all of the watchers fell. Keep that in mind. We're going to be talking about the good guys later on. I think it's around chapter 20 or so. So there are the good guys. These are the bad guys. You think what they did in their spells, their incantations, the hexes, all of those evil things that they used in their potions, in their witchcraft. Think about that stuff that survived. How did it survive the flood? If these guys were taken into captivity, how did this stuff survive the flood? Isn't it interesting that we would read this, that the book of Enoch would tell us, look, when you see these powers, these things arise once again, and it becomes, think about what happened in the 20th century. You could probably say even the late 1800s. Well, witchcraft's gone throughout all the centuries. Don't get me wrong. But the increase of it to the point that it is so popular on television shows. It's laced into everything. And how people, it's like, my religion is such and such, or this and that. And a popular way of people say, well, my religion is witchcraft. They don't use that term, but they'll use a form of that name. And why has there been such a rise of that? And I want to say, as the increase of the darkness because of the release of the watchers, the fallen ones, once again being empowered in the earth today. That's why we're looking at this. This is why we're looking into what were the characteristics then at the time of Enoch, because the parallels are uncanny with what's happening in our modern times. So, whoo. All right, guys, hold your horses. We're going to have more and a lot more to be talking about. Thank you for being part of the broadcast today, the streamcast, whatever. Give us a thumbs up. Make sure you punch that up arrow there in Life of Worship for us. Share and subscribe. We certainly appreciate that. We'll see you on Shabbat. Yeah, here at Life of Worship for the Torah portion. Until then, shalom, shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hugie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.